Hey everyone, this is Eric here, and today Annalisa and I are going to share some of our initial reactions on starting 2020 out in India for the Miles of Portraits series. Also, this is a giant banana tree to get into our Airbnb, which is just so awesome. Alright, even the flight just to arrive to India was an adventure in itself. Annalisa was flying from New York to Cochin Airport, flying Emirates, where I was down visiting my sister for Christmas, so I was actually coming in from Dallas. We decided to meet up in Dubai, where we had a 16-hour layover after a 16-hour flight. And potentially I'm showing up slightly hungover because I had a lot of gin and tonics on the plane, because why not indulge? And yeah, we've arrived here in Dubai, so time to find the other half. And just exploring the city a little bit was this kind of funky vibe where it's like a beach town or beach city, but then also had all of these malls. Like Dubai itself feels like it's almost only for tourists and foreigners. And so after seeing some things like an indoor ski resort in a mall, we actually got on the flight and headed off to Cochin Airport. Now, a lot of people have been wondering how we actually got our bikes to India, and we put them and packed them on the plane. And what was amazing is that before we even landed in the country, we had reached out on Warmshowers to our hosts Katrin and Roland, who sent a car to the airport to pick Annalisa and I up and both of our bikes and bring us to their apartment. That is like the kindness of strangers that started out this trip and has continued as we've been here. Now, dropping off our bikes immediately, Katrin put us on a train up to Calicut to go to a wedding, and that's what started this whole trip. Miles of Portraits India was prompted because of a wedding invitation that Annalisa had from her college friend Shruti, who is marrying Dan, who also went to RISD, or the Rhode Island School of Design. What was remarkable about the wedding is that it stretched over an entire week. To kick off the actual wedding, what was fun is we all kind of got dressed up in traditional clothes. So that is where right now I'm wearing a kurta, and then Annalisa was wearing a sari. And it was just amazing, all the small details that you see. So people's henna, but also the way that they served guests, all the food. And I think what was a really perfect way of describing the whole experience was one of the friends there was saying, pretty much every day we wake up, we get dressed in new clothes, we go somewhere, then we go back on the bus, and then we go eat some more, and like basically we're like celebrities. And that's exactly what it felt like. And kind of like a bigger takeaway for me was on the actual wedding day, there's this moment where they have a huge feast, and they served veg thali, which are these huge banana leaves with all these different toppings and servings. And the reason they did that was because Dan, the groom, actually made that for Shruti, and it was kind of one of those sentimental meals. So there's two separate sittings, and they served guests before their own family, before the bride and groom. And that really speaks a lot about the culture here and how they treat strangers, how they treat new people into their lives. And just experiencing that was really remarkable. Now, since we're going to be riding for a month, and now 2 months, we wanted to get our bikes tuned up. And that is where we learned that nothing in India happens quickly. And sometimes it's for the better. When we dropped off our bikes to get tuned up, we ended up meeting the father and the son who were running the place. And the thing is like, yes, they tuned up our bikes, but then after that, they took us out for tea, they took us out for cookies. They just wanted to learn kind of why we were there and what we wanted to see in India. And some of their advice really kind of takes your breath away. What do you think people could see if they come to Kerala?
There's a lot of variety things to see in Kerala. Mainly the interaction with people is much more better than seeing anything over here. And those Muna regions, they're much awesome.
Now, for those who are interested in where we actually planned on going, we left Calicut and went east towards Munnar, which is with the tea country, which is pretty much all straight climbing. Go out towards Coimbatore, Kotagiri, and now we are going up to Mysore, which the plan has changed about 4 or 5 times. But the thing is, during that first week of actually cycling, we hit a lot of obstacles, and one of them was food poisoning.
So this video was sponsored by our patrons, and for those who don't know, Patreon is basically like an ongoing Kickstarter of about 23 people who are supporting us by giving us $10 a month. And what that does is it actually literally covers our monthly expenses, which is amazing to think about. But these are people who are making this journey possible. One of them is Jonathan Olick. Give him a shout out. He's actually the reason why Eric and I know each other. He started the Type 1 Diabetes meetup group that we joined a few years ago. That is kind of a combination of people from all walks of life who come together because they all have Type 1 diabetes. The Patreon group is kind of an interesting mix of diabetics and cyclists and just people who appreciate what this journey is doing to us. And if you're interested in becoming a supporter, you can go to patreon.com/milesportraits. Eric and I checked into this hotel near Munnar, and we decided to get a paneer dinner. But then at around 5 a.m. the next day, we both were like feeling queasy at the same time. And that day, basically we both were just in bed the entire day. Not to go into too much detail, but I had diarrhea and I was throwing up. And I had never had it so bad where I drank water and I would throw up the water, so I couldn't even hold down water. But then what really drove us to the hospital later that day is when I checked my ketones, and they were the highest that I've ever had them. And mind you, this is with like a perfect blood sugar. I had a perfect blood sugar throughout the whole day, but I was just completely dehydrated, which is why I had high ketones. And that's what prompted us to finally go to the hospital, which is something that I wish we had done earlier that day. I just explained to them that I was a diabetic and I needed fluids, an IV of fluids, and eventually that's what I got. I feel like we had these expectations before we left for India, just that maybe it was more of my dad who had these expectations, but just that the hospitals would be like a nightmare to walk into and that they would be really dirty and unsanitary. And I found it to be completely fine, and it ended up being about 400 rupees or 600 rupees, which is about $10. It's funny, like the nurses who were giving me IVs ended up taking a selfie with me. Everyone in India likes to take selfies, including the nurses. Even when you're feeling like shit, they still ask you for a selfie. It was one of the hardest days of cycling that like either of us have ever had, I think. Alright, Eric, how does this compare to Missouri?
Missouri was just punchy hill and then deep descend and then punchy hill. This is like if you stacked Missouris on top of each other and just kept going up. It is grueling out here.
Eric was comparing it to a marathon, like it was just missing the throw up part of it. But yeah, that was one of the hardest cycling days, and we did that like right after we had food poisoning, which is not recommended. And then before the trip, I feel like we were warned a lot about just like watch out for the people in India and like possible harassment. And what's funny is that I feel like the main harassment that I've gotten is to take selfies with people. And I think it's just a good reminder that, I mean, right now we're at a cyclist farmhouse who we met on Warmshowers. His name is Mohan, and he welcomed us into his family for a few days. They're cooking every meal for us, helping us do our laundry, and just like chilling out here for a few days. And I think that's important to remember, that the world is kind.
So we still have 1 month here in India, so make sure you follow Miles of Portraits. And Annalisa's Instagram will be down there, mine will be here. And if you have any questions or comments, leave them below. Remember, you can go anywhere.
And do anything.
Nice.
Ba-bam!
Hopefully that's good. Oh gosh.
And then I was about to walk out, and Eric was waiting for me in the waiting room, and he didn't feel so good himself. So he ended up like throwing up and also getting an IV, which is where like I kind of wish we knew how to give ourselves IVs, because it really solved our problems the next day. My ketones like eventually went down to normal.